Have you ever noticed how much of your life is shaped by the silent expectations of others? Not your choices, not your values, not your voice, but theirs. The way you dress, the job you chose, even the way you smile when you don't feel like smiling. It's not really yours. It was borrowed, pressured, programmed, and somewhere along the way, you lost yourself. But let me tell you something simple and devastating. If you don't take control of your life, someone else will. Control doesn't always look like domination. Sometimes it wears the mask of love, approval, acceptance. Sometimes it whispers, don't upset them. Stay quiet, fit in, but deep down, you feel it, don't you? That quiet, gnawing sense that you're not living your life. You're performing it for them. The family that never let you say no. The boss who thrives on your silence. The friends who only like you when you're convenient. The partner who's rewritten your boundaries like they were suggestions, not sacred laws. This isn't living. This is surviving in a world built on the expectations of others. And it's no accident. Niccolo Machiavelli, often misunderstood as just a ruthless political schemer, once wrote something deeper. A man who wishes to deceive will always find someone who is willing to be deceived. But ask yourself, what makes someone willing to be deceived? Fear of conflict, fear of being disliked, fear of being alone. You've been trained to believe that staying agreeable keeps the peace, that being liked is the highest form of safety, that to say no is selfish. But here's the truth Machiavelli understood, and it's hard to swallow. People will use you for as long as you let them, not because they're evil, but because that's human nature. It's not cruelty, it's gravity. Power abhors a vacuum, and if you don't own your power, someone else will fill that space. So now, you have a choice. Stay quiet, stay small, stay digestible, or reclaim yourself. Because here's what no one tells you. Every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you bite your tongue, every time you adjust your truth to keep someone else comfortable, you're handing them the script of your life. You're no longer the author. You're just an actor, playing the role someone else cast for you. But you were not born to be managed. You were not born to be edited. You were not born to be pleasing. You were born to be powerful. Now, don't get it twisted. Reclaiming your power isn't about becoming aggressive. It's not about dominance or revenge. It's about clarity, about truth, about walking into every room without needing to shrink. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But that journey doesn't start with self-love. It starts with self-respect. And self-respect requires a line, a boundary, a sacred internal voice that says, "This is who I am." You don't get to write over it. That's when things start to shift. Not outside, but within. You no longer respond to guilt trips with compliance. You respond with calm silence. You no longer say yes while clenching your teeth. You say no with a soft heart and a steady voice. And when people push back, because they will, you don't panic. You don't explain. You don't beg to be understood, because control breaks the moment you stop needing permission to be yourself. Let that sink in. And if this message is landing with you, if something inside you is waking up, hit subscribe. We go deeper like this every week. You deserve more than the life others have planned for you. You deserve your own mind back. So let's go deeper. You've begun to see it now, haven't you? The subtle ways control takes root. Not through chains, but through favors. Through the compliments that come with strings. Through silence that punishes your truth. Through the invisible contracts you never sign. But somehow, you're still bound by them. And it's exhausting. Because every time you suppress yourself for someone else's comfort, you don't just lose time. You lose alignment. You lose dignity. You lose the parts of you that once burned bright. The wild, the weird, the wonderfully unfiltered. But here's the Machiavellian secret no one dares to tell you. Power doesn't corrupt. Power reveals. And when others try to control you, what they're really doing is showing you who they are. They don't need you free. They need you predictable. Not because they hate you, but because your freedom reminds them of their own chains. When you set boundaries, it forces them to confront how boundaryless they've become. When you speak your truth, it forces them to hear the lies they've been telling themselves. And that is threatening, because your clarity is their mirror, and not everyone is ready to see their reflection. But you don't know anyone comfort at the cost of your core. Nietzsche said it like this: the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. And that struggle, it's sacred, because when you stop letting others control you, you don't become cold. You become conscious. You start noticing when people manipulate with praise, when silence is used as a punishment, when kindness comes only after obedience. And slowly, something radical begins to happen. You stop reacting. You start choosing. You stop defending your no. You start protecting your yes. That is what Machiavelli meant when he said, "It is better to be feared than loved." If you cannot be both now, let's unpack that. He wasn't telling you to be cruel. He was telling you this: if your love makes you weak, if your need to be light costs you your spine, then you are not truly loved. You are tolerated, used. True love, true respect, true connection can only exist when you are whole. When you stand in your truth without shrinking. But standing firm doesn't mean shouting. It means knowing. Knowing your limits. Knowing your values. Knowing that saying "I won't" is not an act of rebellion. It's an act of self-loyalty. So ask yourself, who still holds the strings? Whose approval do you still chase? Whose opinion lives rent-free in your mind? And what would your life look like if you finally cut the strings? Would you lose some people? Maybe. But would you find yourself? Absolutely. This is your wake-up call. No one is coming to save you from the patterns you've tolerated. You are the liberator. You are the one who decides that enough is enough. No more apologies for existing. No more performance for praise. No more bending so others don't break. You were not built to be agreeable. You were built to be authentic. And authenticity, real, raw authenticity, doesn't need validation. It needs courage. The courage to say, "This is who I am. I will not abandon myself. Not for love. Not for peace. Not for anything." Because once you stop betraying yourself, you become unshakable. And the people who truly love you, they won't leave. They'll rise to meet you. So don't be afraid of losing the ones who only loved your mask. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be free. But here's where the shift begins. You start to see that control is rarely taken, it's given freely, quietly, slowly. In small moments where you silence yourself so others can speak. When you shape your life around someone else's expectations. When you apologize for wanting more. And in that moment, you realize this isn't just about power, it's about presence. Niccolo Machiavelli once said, "He who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived." It's not always malicious. Sometimes, people aren't even trying to control you, but your compliance, your silence, that's the real invitation. That's what makes you easy to mold. This is your wake-up call. You're not here to be agreeable. You're not here to bend just to be accepted. And you are definitely not here to play the role someone else wrote for you. Because the cost of people-pleasing isn't just stress, it's your soul, your authenticity, your direction, your life. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you made a decision just for you? Not to avoid conflict, not to gain approval, not to fit the image someone else had in mind, but because it aligned with your truth. If it's been a while, it's time to remember who's in charge. Now listen closely. Machiavelli's philosophy wasn't about cruelty, it was about clarity, about understanding the raw, often uncomfortable truths of power. One of his most misunderstood messages was this: it is better to be feared than loved. If you cannot be both, but that's not a command to be ruthless. It's a reminder. Respect begins with boundaries. And boundaries, they begin with you. The person who cannot say no will always live at the mercy of someone else's yes. So what does this mean for you? It means you must confront the ways you dilute yourself. Notice the habits where you trade truth for harmony, and begin building a relationship with your own authority. This is not arrogance. It's not selfishness. It's integrity. Nietzsche once wrote, "He who cannot command himself must obey." And here lies the heart of the matter. If you want to stop being controlled by others, you have to stop abandoning yourself, because the first person to ever betray your freedom was you. You taught others how to treat you through silence. You trained them to expect your compliance through consistency. And now, it's time to unlearn. This isn't about becoming hard. It's about becoming whole. So pause right now. Close your eyes and picture the version of yourself who doesn't ask for permission to be real. Who walks into a room and doesn't shrink. Who speaks with clarity not to offend, but to stand. Who moves through life not trying to win others, but to win back their own self. That version of you exists. It's not a fantasy. It's just buried beneath years of molding and pleasing. And now it's your job to dig. And if this message is landing with you, if something inside is stirring, subscribe. We go deeper like this every week. And I'd rather we do it together than you walk this alone. Because here's the truth. Most people never reclaim their power because they're afraid of what they'll lose. Friends.approval. Comfort. Predictability. But what if you're losing more by staying the same? Let's be honest. Reclaiming your power isn't glamorous. It's not loud. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes, it's as subtle as saying no when your voice trembles. As quiet as pausing before you say yes, just to ask yourself if you really mean it. But that's where the revolution begins, in the small moments. Because if you can't control the small things, the world will control the big ones for you. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He didn't just write about kings and kingdoms, he wrote about human nature. And one of his most piercing insights was this: men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear. And if you're not conscious, someone will use one of those against you. Maybe they'll guilt you into action because they know you crave to be loved, or maybe they'll intimidate you into silence because they sense your fear of rejection. But what if you understood those impulses in yourself? What if you could own them before someone else weaponized them? That's what this is about. Awareness is power. Self-knowledge is freedom. And boundaries, they're not walls, they're doors with locks you control. You've probably spent years giving others the keys. Friends, bosses, lovers, family. And they didn't even have to steal control, you handed it to them, wrapped in people-pleasing and silence. But now you see it, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start to notice the subtle ways you hesitate before speaking, how you change your tone to avoid sounding too much, how you shrink your dreams just to stay relatable. And then you ask, why? Why do I do this? And the answer hurts, because somewhere along the way, you believed the lie that being yourself wasn't enough, that keeping the peace was safer than holding your truth, that staying small was easier than risking being alone. But let me offer you something different. What if being misunderstood isn't a curse, it's a sign you're finally being authentic? What if disappointing others is part of freeing yourself? What if the version of you that scares them is the one that saves you? You don't need to become manipulative. You don't need to dominate. You just need to decide to stop explaining, stop apologizing for existing, stop waiting for permission to be who you already are. Because here's the harsh truth. If you don't own your life, someone else will rent it from you, and they'll pay you in breadcrumbs of validation and scraps of affection. But you're not here for scraps. You are here to build a life that echoes your soul, to choose from clarity, not obligation, to say yes because it aligns, not because it's expected. And you can start today. Start small. Start scared. Start unsure. But start, because the longer you wait, the deeper the roots grow, the roots of a life you never chose. But now you choose. You choose truth over comfort, power over passivity, alignment over approval. And when you do, you'll feel it. Not instantly, not with applause, but in the quiet, sacred moment where you finally hear yourself again. That's when you'll know you've stopped letting others control you, and you've started leading yourself. What will you choose to do with that power? Will you stay silent or speak? Will you stay small or rise? Will you let others write your story or take the pen back in your hands? The choice is always yours. And I hope this message stayed with you deeply. If it did, and you want more like this, you already know what to do. Subscribe, stick around, grow with us. This is Filicide, where wisdom becomes action and thought becomes freedom. Now ask yourself one final question. Who were you before the world told you who to be? And are you ready to meet them again?